Welcome back to Drafting with Mark, and in this video we're going to be taking an isometric drawing here and creating all the views that are associated with it, and also an isometric. And we're going to all be doing this in 2D, so this is going to be a long video, so go ahead and sit back and relax and let's get started. Okay, so some of the things that you should already know about an isometric view is that looking this direction is going to be the front view, this direction is the right side view, and then looking down on it is going to be the top view. So whenever you're creating your views, you should always associate them with your isometric view, right? So that's kind of one of your standard practices to tell you which view is what. Typically also one of those neat things or one of those beginning drafting things that you're going to learn is that the front view should be your most detailed view. So you can see that in this front view, I'm going to have kind of this view and the width and things of that nature of it. But I can also have on this one the top view. So I really can define this with those two views, most of it. But I do need the right side view in this case. All right. So let's jump over to AutoCAD and get started on this. Let's go ahead and take care of our normal stuff that we usually do. Let's go ahead and turn this grid off. And then we're going to turn our ISO on. And then we're going to take a look at my running O snaps here. And it's going to be the same ones that I typically have. So these are the ones I use all the time. Alright, so the way that I'm going to get started, I think I'll do the drafting, the 2D drafting part of it first. And then I'll create my isometric off of that. So I'm going to start by creating the front view. Let's go ahead and start with the line here. Let's go straight across 120. All right. And it's going to shoot off the page. I'm just going to escape here and then I will zoom the extents. And then I'll kind of zoom out a little bit more. All right. So from here, let's go ahead and continue making these lines that we're going to need. So I'm going to draw a line from here going up a height of 50. Let's go back to the left here, a distance of 120. And then come down here 50, or you can just click this endpoint. Then hit escape. Let's go ahead and do an offset. So I'm just going to offset this line going up, and that height should be 20. So let's offset. Give it a value of 20. Select this line and go up. All right. Now we have a couple of radius on the top of this, or radii I should say, that are on the top of this, and they have a radius of 20. So let's go to fillet. Radius. Let's go ahead and set this number equal to 20. And I do have more than one, so I'll select multiple. And from here, I'm just going to go ahead and create these two. Okay. Let's go ahead and put that slot on the inside. And remember that those circles have a radius of 6. So let's go back to circle, center, radius. I'm just going to touch this circle to get the center. Click here. Give it a radius of 6. Then here's one of those shortcuts in AutoCAD. Just hit enter to repeat the last command. Then I'm just going to touch this and then come to the center here. Do a left click. Kind of always preview my circle. And since it's the last size circle as my, or same size circle as my last one, I'll just hit enter. I'll draw a line from this quadrant over to this quadrant. Escape out of that and repeat the line command. So line from this quadrant over to this quadrant. Let's go ahead and trim. All right, and our front view is almost done. We do have a couple of hidden lines here, but we'll see them once we create that on the top view. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit and let's start working on this top view. I'll start off with the line here. And I'm just going to touch this and track up. And just give it yourself a good distance away from it. Look like this 75 is enough, so I'm just going to click here. I'm going to go across this direction. Remember, this is 120. I'm going to go up a distance of 100. To the left, 120. And then C to close. Okay. From here, I'll go back to the offset command. Give it a distance of 20. I'm just going to offset this line forward. Next, I'm going to use the fillet command, and these have a radius sitting at 30. So let's go to fillet, radius, Set the value to 30. And we do have more than one, so I'm going to select multiple. And then I'll just go ahead and put those fillets on here. Escape. Let's go ahead and create our circle with the radius of 15. So I'll click here, type in 15. And just like we did on the top view, I'm just going to create another circle with the radius. Just going to click here. It's the exact same size, so I'll just go ahead and hit enter. And then we're going to connect those lines at the quadrants. So I'm just going to draw a line from this quadrant to this quadrant. Likewise on the other side. So line from this quadrant going across to this quadrant. I'm going to go ahead and trim this between it. And that should be everything that I'm going to need to create the top view and the front view. Now I do have a couple of hidden lines running through this, and they happen to run right down through where this line intersects here. So let's go ahead and place that there. So we're going to use a construction line that's vertical. And then to place those, right, so I'm just going to go at this a midpoint, at that midpoint. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to use the trim command. So I'll go to trim, select cutting edges, and then I'm going to select these two lines, enter, and then I'll just go ahead and trim off those two. Alright, escape out of that and do the exact same thing here on the top. So I'll use the construction line, vertical. This time I'm going to select these two midpoints. And then go back to the trim command like we did. So trim, cutting edges. I'll select both of these endpoints, enter. And then I'm just going to take away these long lines here at the bottom and at the top. Alright, so now we have our front view and our top view created. Let's go ahead and create the right side view. Alright, so we're going to start with the line. I'm just going to touch off of here and track. Now the distance of this should be the exact same distance from this endpoint down to here. So if we remember kind of what we created on that one, I'm just going to do a left click here. Go this direction, 100. I'm going to go up a height of 50. Come to the left, 20. I'm going to go down 30. I'll go back to the left a distance of 80. And then I'll go see to close. Okay. So those are going to be all the lines that I need to create that, right? Now, we do have those slots that are running through here, right? And the only way we're going to create those is just by using the offset. All right, so one neat trick to do this is that we can use the offset command. And I'm just going to click from this midpoint to this midpoint to set my distance. And then I'll be able to offset going this direction, right? And then if I want to go back to the offset, so I'll escape out of that, then I can use offset again just to set this distance from these two midpoints. And that'll set that distance. Okay, escape out of that, and I'll do the exact same thing here for the top. Go to offset, from that midpoint to this midpoint. That's going to select that distance going down. And I could have also used construction lines that came over and trimmed them off, but I think showing you a little bit more how to use the offset was kind of important here. So back to the offset, midpoint down to that midpoint. And then I have all the lines I needed, right? So that's going to conclude just the 2D drafting of this. Next, I'm just going to flip over and start doing the isometric stuff. So the first thing we need to do is tell AutoCAD that we want to work in isometrics. So I'm going to select the ISO draft button. And then I'm going to start creating the shape, right? But before I do that, I want to make sure that I'm on the ISO right plane. We're going to start off with the line. I'm going to click here. I'm going to go down a distance of 20. I'm going to go back this direction here, and this is going to be 100. Let's go up a distance of 50. Let's go here to the left, 20. We're going to go down 30. And then I'll type in C to close. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy some of these lines just to create my other side. So I'm just going to select these lines here. Use the copy command. I'm going to switch to isometric top. Pick a base point here and drag off this direction 120. Alright, let's go ahead and finish connecting some of this stuff. So I'm just going to use a line command and connect these endpoints, right? So I'll select this one and do that, right? And then I'm just going to copy the rest of these endpoints. So I'll select here, choose copy, go to this endpoint, and now I'm just going to select each one of these endpoints. Okay, so now we have our shape created isometrically. But remember that we do have some radius on here, some radii I should say, and we do have these slots that are going through. So the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to use another kind of neat command that we use, but we typically use it in a different way. Alright, so I'm going to use the lengthen command. The lengthen is located here. I'm going to use the delta option. And then I need to tell it how far to go back. Now, if you know anything about radiuses, is that it's telling me that the center of that radius happens to be the length of that radius. And hopefully I can explain that a little bit better with demonstrating this. So I'm just going to type in -30, right? Because our radius on this arcs on the outside are set to 30. So I'm going to give my delta a -30. Go ahead and hit enter. And then I'm just going to click these two lines back and these two lines. I'm going to do the same here on the other side as well as this line. Alright, so what essentially I've done is I've located the center of that and I've already got my trim set here, right? Now I'm going to use my polar tracking, well I should say polar and O-snap tracking kind of together here to find my center of my fillets here on the corner. So let's go ahead and use an ellipse. So remember I have to type this in, ellipse, so EL, enter. Then I'll type in I for iso circle. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to touch this endpoint. And then I'm going to come over and touch this endpoint. And then I'm going to move my cursor here. And where they meet here, I'll do a left click. And now you can choose to type in the radius, or you can select this endpoint. Alright, so I've created that one. What I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to copy from this. So I'm going to select the ellipse that I just created. I'm going to use the copy command. And I'll use this endpoint going to that endpoint. Okay, let's escape out of this and let's go ahead and clean this up by using the trim. And I'm just going to trim off these portions here. Okay, escape from that. I'm going to select these two arcs. Use copy. And I'm going to use this endpoint down to this endpoint. Alright, let's escape out of this. I'll select this line here. I'm going to use copy. I'm going to go from this endpoint. And then I'm going to select this endpoint here. And we have an endpoint here. We have one here. And then we're going to place another one at the midpoint or quadrant that is located here. Okay, I'll escape out of this command. And then we'll use the trim command to clean up all of this stuff that we don't need. So I'm just going to trim off these portions, including these lines on the outside that I don't need anymore. Okay, so there we go. So basically when I cut those lines back 30, I was able to find where the center was as opposed to drawing the actual lines on my part. We're going to see that again when we create the ones that are up here. Remember that these have a radius of 20. So let's go back to the lengthen command like we did before. So I'll go to lengthen. Then I'll choose delta. -20 because I want to subtract from these lines. Enter. And then I'm just going to select these lines here. And we have 3 more to select. Or 4 more, I should say. Alright. So now we have our lines created. We need to switch our isometric plane here. We're going to switch that to ISO left. We're going to type in EL, and that's short for ellipse. Enter. Then we'll type in I enter. And just like we did before, I'm going to touch that endpoint. Do not click on it. I'll touch this endpoint. And then I'm just going to move my cursor down, and you're going to see where they intersect. I'll do a left click here, and then I'll place it right on that endpoint. Go ahead and select your ellipse that you just created. Choose copy. I'll go from this endpoint to that endpoint. Escape. Let's go ahead and go to trim. Let's trim off the portions that we don't need. All right. And then we're going to copy like we did before. So I'm just going to select both of these. Use the copy command. I'm going to go from this endpoint to that endpoint. Escape. I'll select this line here. Choose copy. Now I'm going to go to this endpoint. I'm going to first place it on that quadrant, this endpoint, that endpoint, and then finally this endpoint. Let's escape out of this. Use the trim command and go ahead and clean out all of this stuff up. So I'm just going to clean all of these extra lines up. All right. So next thing I'm going to do is, since I have my cursor already set to ISO left, let's go ahead and put the slots that are located here on the top plane. Let's choose an ellipse. So EL, then I enter. It's going to be located at this center. So I'm going to click here, and it has a radius of 6. All right, let's do the exact same thing on the other side. So EL, enter. I enter. Go ahead and find your center, click it here, and then it has a radius of 6. Now I'm going to zoom in a little bit. It's going to be kind of hard to show you tracking where these lines are going. I want a line that goes from this quadrant to that quadrant. Well, these are ellipses, so they quite don't have the quadrants where you want them. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to use a line. I'm going to find the center here. I'm going to touch the center, and then I'll move my cursor going straight up, and then it's going to intersect here. Do a left click, come over this direction, find your center, touch your center, and then track up from it, and then do a left click. Okay? Escape from here. Now you got two choices. You can either copy that or you can do that again. I like practicing doing stuff over and over again, so we'll go ahead and do that one more time. So let's go back to the line command, and the way we're going to do this is we're going to touch the center here, come straight down to where it intersects, do a left click, come to the other circle, find the center, touch the center, and then come down, and where you get the intersection, do a left click, and then escape. All right, let's go ahead and trim this off. So I'm just going to trim here and here. Now, one of the things that you might want to check and make sure that this does not show through. So to kind of save myself some extra steps here, I'm going to select this slot that I just created, and then I'm going to join it together. So I'm just going to type J enter. It's the exact same thing as going up here to the top and selecting the join command here. All right, I'm going to select my slot. I'll choose copy, and I'm just going to go from this endpoint to that endpoint. So if any portion of this other slot would have shown in here, that means that I have to show that, right? But I'm just going to go ahead and put some tangential lines in there just to show you. I'm going to go to copy that. So I'm going to select that line, copy it from this endpoint, and I'm just going to place it at this endpoint here, and I do have an endpoint here. All right, let's go ahead and erase this in the back so we don't need that anymore. So I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to trim off my extra parts here. So I'm just going to trim here and trim off these portions here. All right, so we got that slot all taken care of. Let's take care of the one here. First thing we need to do is switch to isometric top. And then I'm going to go ahead and create the ellipses there. So ellipse, then iso circle. I'm going to go find the center, click on the center, and these have a radius of 15. I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side. So EL, I enter, go find the center, click the center, and then just type in 15. Now I could have used the copy command like we did before. All right, we're going to do the exact same steps as we created these slots with. So I'm going to start with the line command. I'm going to go find the center. I'm going to touch the center. And then I'm going to come up here along this way, left click on that intersection. Then I'll go find my center here, touch the center, and then come up and track off of it, do a left click here. Escape. Do that one more time just for practice. So I'm just going to go to line command, find the center first, touch the center, come down and follow the tracking to where it intersects with your ellipse here. Left click, go find the center here, touch the center, and then track off of it to where it intersects here. Do a left click, then escape. Alright, so from here we're going to trim these portions off. We're going to go ahead and trim that line here, and then this one. And like we did before with this one, we're going to see if we get any pass-through going through this. So I'm going to select all of this arc here. And then I'm just going to go to join, right? So last time I just hit J enter, or you can select this icon here. I look down, it says, hey, you have one object, right? I'm going to select my spline now is what it's called. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to go from that endpoint going straight down to this endpoint. So now you can see that this is my first one, and then this is the second one. So if anything shows up on this one, that means that it's showing through that surface. Let's go ahead and copy some lines here, and then we should be able to finish this off. So I'm going to select that line there, copy from this endpoint, and then I'm just going to place it on these endpoints here. So I have an endpoint, and they're kind of coming up a little weird here, and I apologize. It gave me an extra line over there, but I'm going to go ahead and erase it here in a second. All right, let's go to trim. And then let's start trimming off these extra lines here. So I'm just going to trim off this portion here. This line should have never been created. So I'm just going to erase that there. And just kind of following the trim around. And you can see that you will just only see the part that is kind of passing through. All right. And that should be the conclusion for the isometric part. So next, let's go into making sure we can put this on a title block. And we're going to use the, let's say, the annotative method to do that, right? So let's go ahead and zoom the extents and bring back our other part of our drawing. We have everything that we need. Next, let's go ahead and create a quick title block. So I'm going to go ahead and get out of isometric. I'm going to create a quick title block, and let's use a B size in this case. So I'm going to start off by using a rectangle. Type in 0, 0 as my starting point, and 17, 11 as my other part of this line. I'm going to offset this. So let's go to offset. Give it a distance of 0.25. And it seems like my number pad is not working. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to go back to offset. There we go. Type in 0.25. And I'm going to offset this line to the inside. I'm going to select these two lines really quick, hit the create button. It already has our base point. I just need to give it a name. I'm just going to call it TB. Hit OK. And there's my title block, a quick title block created for you. I'm going to create some quick layers as well. And the only ones I'm going to need is going to be a center layer and some hidden layers, right? So I'm just going to go to Layer Properties. I'm going to hit the New button here. I'm just going to call a center layer. Right, just going to call it Send. And then I'm going to create a hidden one. And I'm just calling it Hid, H-I-D. For the hidden one, let's go ahead and make that color red. And for the center layer, let's go ahead and make it cyan. So I'm going to select that one, and that should be color number 4. Then we're going to load the line types. So for the hidden one, I'm going to click on the word continuous next to it. Go to load. Scroll till you find the hidden one. And I like to use the 0.5 scale. Go ahead and hit OK on that. Then select the hidden one and hit OK. Go to the center one. Select the word continuous along that line. Go to load. I'm going to go to where it says center, the 0.5 one. Go ahead and hit OK. Then I'm going to select it here and then hit OK. And now we created those two layers, right? If we need any others, we can come back and do that. We can create a dimension one and all that stuff. But just for this example, I'll kind of show you how to put these things in. All right, let's go ahead and close that. Zoom back out. I'm going to select my title block and then do a right click and choose Properties. In here, I'm going to take a look at the Scale X, Scale Y, and Scale Z. So here, I'm going to find the Scale X first. And here, I like to kind of start off with some numbers here, right? So I'm going to start off with 20 for both of them. Let's kind of zoom out and see if that does fit my title block, right? Looks like it's close, but I'm going to make that number 30. And let's see if 30 gives me a better option to fit everything in. I'm kind of taking a look, and I think I should be able to get away with 30. All right, so we're going to leave it at 30. Let's go ahead and hit Escape. And then I'm going to move these objects around a little bit. So I'm going to move my isometric up in this top corner. Let's go ahead and turn the ortho off. Now this isometric does not have to be full scale. What I mean by that is if this is too big for you, you can always scale this down. And in our case, I think that's what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to scale, and I'm going to select it here, hit enter. I'll click this as my end point or base point, and then I'm going to scale it at a factor of 0.75. So that kind of shrinks that down a little bit. Let's go ahead and move these objects now. So I'm just going to put a window around it, go to move, and kind of move these into position here. Now, remember that there's a rule of thumb that the front view has to be in line with this right side view, as well as the front view has to keep in line with the top view. So always remember that if you're going to move any one of these, it's a good idea to put your ortho back on if you're planning on doing any of that stuff. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and set my annotation scale. So we have it set to 30. So I'm going to just take a look here and type it and make it 30. Now that's going to set my line types and things of that nature. So when I go ahead and select these lines now and put them on the correct layer, which happens to be the hidden layer, you should see that we get those dashed lines running through it. I'm going to use the match property. So escape out of that, go to match properties, select the hidden line here first. And then I'm just going to select these two lines on the inside here, and these two lines. All right, so my hidden lines are done. Let's go ahead and do the center line. So first I'm going to type in the command of center layer. And then what layer I'm going to choose to set that on is going to be on the CEN layer, right? The CEN layer. All right, so that's one benefit thing that I can do that'll put it on the right layer for me. The next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and adjust the center EXE. And that number I'm going to make something anywhere, usually it's 3 to 5 is what I like to use if I'm making a big metric drawing like this one. And so I think I'm going to use 3. All right, let's zoom in and take a look at some of these. Let's jump to the annotation tab, choose center mark, and I'm going to select these two centers. Likewise here. I think that's all the center marks I need. I can place one in between here and in between here as well. I'll do that with the center line command. So I'll go to center line, and I can just click in between these two. Go ahead and hit the enter button on my keyboard to take me back to the last command. And I can do it here. Okay, so I think I got everything that I needed covered for this, right? I can also put a center line that's kind of connecting both of these, and I can use that with this center line command here. I can select that line and then this line, and it will connect that one in between it. All right, so we have that done. Now let's go ahead and start putting some dimensions on this, right? So we're going to go ahead and set up our dimension style. I'm going to select this little tab here. Once that tab opens up the dialog box, I'm going to double click on annotative since we use an annotative scale here at the bottom. I'm going to go to modify, and I always start from the right to the left. It seems to make more sense to me when I do it that way. So if I start with the primary units, I'm just going to go ahead and suppress the trailing 0. Underneath the fit tab, we don't have to worry about this. If we were using a manual, we would have to adjust this number here. Underneath the text, We're going to make this number 0.125, which is 1/8 of an inch, which happens to be a standard height for most of your text on most of your drawings. And then I'll go to symbols and arrows. I'm just going to turn my center marks off since I went through the effort of putting them on my drawing already. Hit OK, and then close. All right, so now I'm ready to start doing some dimensioning on this, right? If I had a dimension layer, that's kind of what this is. So if I created a dimension layer and had it a different color, I can go ahead and adjust it and have it automatically set to that layer. But we don't have that, so I'm just going to go ahead and put some linear dimensions on here. And you can remember on this view here, this gives me my quick overalls. So I think I'm going to use this view here to create my overall dimensions. So I'm just going to use a linear dimension on both of these. All right, and then from here I can locate how far this is. Now that depends on which way you want to kind of look at this, or you want to locate those slots. I can go from this endpoint to that endpoint, right? Select it here. Now I want my dimension to be on the outside, so I'm going to go to the linear. I'm going to select this endpoint first, and then this endpoint. And then you'll notice that my dimension is on the outside. If I'd have did it in the reverse order, to put my dimension on the inside. If you use Inventor, it works backwards than that. So that's kind of one of those things you got to kind of remember. Go back to the linear option. I'm just going to select that endpoint to this endpoint and go ahead and place it right on that endpoint. Okay? Let's go ahead and knock out both of the radii that are on here. So I'm going to go ahead and place the two radius dimensions. I have one dimension going on this one, and then I have another dimension that's on this one. So back to the radius command, and I have both of those on. Now both of these are in two places, right? But I think I'm going to save that to when I get my top dimensions already done. All right, so on this top view, let's go ahead and put a linear dimension on this one as well. So I'm going to go to linear, from this back edge to here. That is going to give me my 70. Like I did at the bottom with the linear, I want my dimension to be on the outside, so I'm going to select this endpoint to that endpoint, and when I come and place it, it'll go here. So if that dimension fell on the outside, it would have put it here, but it had enough room to fit it to the inside. Let's go back to linear, go from this endpoint to this endpoint, and place that dimension at that endpoint. Okay. Let's go ahead and put our last couple of radii dimensions on here. So let's go to radius, select here, then I'll do one more radius dimension that's located here. All right, so we have everything selected. Now all of my radius dimensions have a 2x in front of them, so I'm just going to go ahead and select them all. And let's see, I have a 31 here. And then I have the one that says 15 here. My properties window happens to still be open. So I'm going to scroll down to where it says dim prefix. And I'm just going to type in 2x. Give it a space between it. And then hit enter. And I hope it didn't get rid of my R. And sometimes it does that. So I'm going to go back here and also put a space and then put an R behind it. Okay, let's go ahead and escape here. So now all of these dimensions have a 2x, and I have my radius already dimensioned on this. And I should have everything that I need now to create this. So hopefully you enjoyed watching this one. And if you like doing this comment, please consider, liking and subscribing if you want to help out the channel a lot. I know it doesn't, cost you anything, but it means a lot to me. And I want to thank you again for hanging with me and watching this whole video. All right, so until the next video, thank you.